Hi everyone, join me in this video as we create this cute little strawberry bear zipper pouch. It's a fully lined zipper pouch and I'm going to give you the full tutorial on how to create this in this video. If you don't have the design yet, you can purchase it in my shop and I'll leave the link in the description. Thanks, and let's get started.
For this project, you will need some webbing and a lobster clasp for a little hanger, or you can just use a handle. I'm using this webbing. You're also going to need 2 pieces of fabric for the ears. I'm just using Minky for both the front and the back. Then you're going to need 4 pieces of fabric for the back panel, which each of those panels is going to be, for me, a Minky and a satin, and you'll have to sew those together at the top, or you could just cut one on the fold for each one if you don't want to sew. Now I added batting on the inside and a little stabilizer. I'm going to show you how I sewed that in just a minute. I sewed it with my machine. And then you're going to need 2 pieces for the main body. So I'm using a Minky and a satin. So just those 2 pieces, and you can even put batting underneath that main fabric when you lay that down if you want to make it a little thicker. So in just a minute, I'm going to show you how I sewed that on my machine. So you're also going to need the hoops. I'm using a 130 by 130 and 240 by 240. So here I'm sewing those back panels, and I'm sewing the satin to the Minky, wrong sides out, and then I'm adding batting to the inside. So I'm going to add some batting and stabilizer to the inside, and then I'm going to sew that in an understitching technique to the lining. So I'm going to sew those to the lining so they don't shift when I add the when I add them to the hoop. Okay, and so I used a walking foot on my FOF to sew that satin to the Minky. But if you don't want to do this step, you can just fold 2 of those pieces, cut them each on the fold, so that you can just fold them over and add them to the hoop if you don't want to do any sewing in this project. And of course, I'm giving everything a quick press so that it all lines up well, and I know that it's going to be correct when I put it in the hoop. And again, you can just fold it over and preferably press it if you don't want to do any sewing. Here, notice I'm sewing the batting and stabilizer to the lining side, and I'm actually sewing that with the seam toward the lining and the batting to hold that all down, so that when it folds over, it'll have a nice, neat appearance. And I'm using my FOF with my walking foot. The first hooping is to do the ears, so we'll go ahead and do the placement line, and then it will sew the inside of the ear, which will be the design, and I'm using pink for that. So after the placement line, of course, we're going to put our fabric right side up on top of the placement line. And then we're going to add and I'm using a water soluble stabilizer on all these for the design, and that just holds the stitches up away from the fabric. Next, the design for the ear is stitched, and then we'll add the final piece of fabric right side down. This is the placement line for the back fabric. And then I'm putting that final piece of fabric right side down, and I'll tape it to hold it in place so the minky doesn't shift. And next I'm going to turn it out and cut right through the center and cut around the ears. I'm just cutting closely around the ears. I'm not using any extra cuts there. And turn it and set it aside for the next step. Next, we'll do hooping number 2. This is for the zipper back of the pouch. The first step is a placement line. Don't forget, use a tearaway stabilizer on this because we'll need to pull that away later to reveal the inside lining. So next we get the placement line for the zipper, and you'll want to tape your zipper with the pull already attached down onto the tearaway stabilizer, and make sure the center of the zipper is along the center line. So next we're going to sew that zipper. And the pull is going to be outside the hoop area when you sew this part, and then after you're done, you're going to pull back to the inside after you finish the entire piece. So next we get the placement for the top area. So we're going to add panel 1 above the zipper. This is a part that we sewed together on the machine, or you can just cut it on the fold if you don't want to sew. So now that gets tacked down, and next we're going to add the next panel to the bottom. All right, and that gets tacked down. And the back panel is done. Just move the zipper pull to the inside so you don't forget to do that later. And I go ahead and tape mine down. We'll remove that from the hoop, cut away the excess zipper, and set it aside for later. Now we get the final hooping, so we get the placement line for the entire piece. Now you're going to put your large piece of main fabric face up over the placement line, and I put that with the nap going down, okay, toward me. And so then after this placement line, the entire design is sewn. And I forgot my tearaway stabilizer. Let's go ahead and add that. I'm sorry, water soluble stabilizer over the top. Let's go ahead and add that. And then the design sews. After the design sews, we'll have the placement line for the ears. It's going to sew that now. We're going to take those ears and place them across the placement line with the seams matching up with the seams on the main fabric. And I'm going to tape those face down and inward toward the inside of the design so that when we turn it, they'll be facing up. So next we get the tack down for those ears. Okay, I'll just remove the tape. And next that's the placement line for the little hanger. So again, you could use a handle if you prefer. So I'm just cutting the hanger so that I like the size of it. And I'm going to put that toward the inside of the design and tape that down. And next the tack down for that hanger. And this is the placement line for the entire back piece. So we place that back piece face down over the entire design, and the piece is slightly larger than the front piece so that you can place it over the front piece with a little tolerance so that you won't have to have those seams showing. So just line it up such that it covers the entire back piece. So next we're going to place the lining face down, and I know this is a little bit confusing, but we're going to turn the whole piece through the lining, and that's going to make the lining for the front half. So you'll see that I'm removing it from the hoop, and I'm going to cut around, and I'm just using some fabric scissors for the fabric part, but I'm going to use some cheap scissors to cut through that webbing and zipper so I don't mess up my good scissors. So I'm just going to cut away what I don't need, but leave fabric around that opening where I'm going to turn it so we don't tear our fabric there. So I'm switching to my cheap scissors to cut around that webbing. So just cut around the entire piece. And next we're going to turn the entire design through that lining. So I'm cutting away the excess batting and stabilizer, and I'm going to turn the design through the lining so that the lining will be on the front side. So it'll be the lining for the front side. Okay, it's a little difficult to do, but you can work it through there. If it's a little stiff, kind of hard, but you can just keep going and work it through. Once you have that turned, then your design will be inside out. So after you'll turn it, you'll need to close that hole. So I serged the excess fabric off except for the lining part around that hole, and then I folded the lining over the hole and used some fabric tape, I think, to close that up. So you can use double-sided fabric tape, or you can use, you can just sew it, or you can use some glue. So any way you want to close that hole. So you can make this design completely without sewing if you do a double fold. If you just fold your fabric over and cut it instead of using two different types of fabric. I just wanted the satin lining. So this is so cute. You'll just need to close that inside seam, and you can see that we have our zipper pouch. Such a cute little pouch. I look forward to seeing all the ones you guys make, and again, you can get that link in the description if you want to purchase this design. Thanks for watching and have a great day.